Okay, so this video is for AP Bio, topic 7.8, and it's a few examples of evolution that we see in life today. So our first one we're going to talk about is antibiotic resistance. So prokaryotes, little single-celled organisms, which include bacteria. Now, bacteria reproduce incredibly fast, anywhere from 4 to 20 minutes to double. And when we say double, they are reproducing by binary fission, and it's an asexual reproductive process. Whereas in like humans, we use meiosis to create gametes and lead to fertilization, etc. So here we have two identical bacteria, and then they will double by binary fission. So now we have 4. And now these double by binary fission. Now we're at 8. So it's really quick exponential growth. But here we see a mutation. So when we look at the DNA content within a bacterium, they have their main circular chromosome, which is that squiggly line you see in the middle. It basically is in an area called the nucleoid region, but there's no nucleus in prokaryotes. Then the little tiny circle things around it are plasmids that have anywhere from 50 to 500 genes. Now, bacteria, because they are such a short-lived organism, they have not evolved a lot of proof-checking mechanisms to check for mutations in their DNA. So mutations happen constantly, and if a mutation occurs that provides resistance to antibiotics, well, in certain environments, that would be considered to be high fitness. Now, if these bacteria were never exposed to antibiotics, that would be like a neutral mutation. Now, antibiotics, the way they generally work, they are going to be targeting certain proteins or aspects of the bacterium. And so maybe the antibiotics are targeting a certain enzyme in the bacteria, and that's how, if the antibiotics destroy the enzyme, well, now the bacterium can't survive. Well, what if this gene that's mutated now creates a different shape of the enzyme, and now the antibiotic doesn't work against it, right? So it's something like that. So anyway, so here we have this new mutation that when this population doubles again, here we're going to have 2 of the bacteria in the little population will have that mutation. But then they double, and they're going to continue doubling. So let's say this is a pathogenic bacteria. And so you get some kind of infection and the bacteria are multiplying. Eventually you feel kind of sick. Maybe it's like strep throat, or maybe it's like a staph infection. And so now you have a whole colony of bacteria multiplying quickly inside of you. And you take some antibiotics. You go to the doctors, you get antibiotics, and you start to take them. And so you start to take your antibiotics and the bacteria start to die off. But what we notice is that the antibiotics are really only effective against the bacteria that don't have that mutation for antibiotic resistance. So here, by the time you have finished your antibiotics, or towards the end of your course of antibiotics, you have a group of bacteria that are resistant to them, right? And now what they're going to do is they're going to double. They're going to multiply. So what we find is that this new mutation providing resistance against antibiotics, meaning that antibiotics don't kill them. So it confers high fitness, I guess you can say. So that trait is selected for in this bacterial population, and now they're the ones who are going to survive and reproduce. And now you have a whole population of bacteria that are resistant. Now, this is a huge threat to humanity. We are facing the evolution of bacteria and the development of these super bugs where we don't have any working antibiotics against them. And part of this is from our overprescribing of antibiotics. If you go into the doctors and you have just a flu virus and you ask for antibiotics, the antibiotics aren't going to destroy a flu virus, and so therefore you're just killing off your weak bacteria and only the strong survive type of thing. We also find in the United States more than 35,000 people die a year from antibiotic resistant infections. So it is something serious. I also want to point out too that about 75% of the antibiotics that are produced and prescribed in the United States are given to livestock, which is our farm animals, because they live in such close quarters and disease can spread real quickly in a high population density. So anytime you're eating generic beef, chicken, cheese, dairy, etc., if those animals were fed antibiotics, you're ingesting those too, and they have an impact on your own microbiome. All right. So let's go ahead and see another example of evolution happening today. We have something called herbicide resistance. So let's say you're a farmer and one of the problems that you have are weeds, right? So scientists have developed herbicides that will kill weeds that are growing. So we have like, this is also true, I should say, for like pesticides as well. So if there were like insects eating the crops. So here you have like that's like called a crop duster, like the plane that just flew by, is spraying herbicides or pesticides onto our crops and hopefully killing the pests or the weeds that are growing. Now, if they don't all die, right, you have your resistant ones that are then going to survive and reproduce. And now you have a whole new generation or a whole new population that are resistant to the herbicide you just used. Now, this also holds true for the pests and like little insects. So we have what's called a pesticide or herbicide treadmill. So as the plants or insects evolve resistance, well, then we develop stronger chemicals and then they evolve those and then we get stronger ones, and so it's like an ongoing evolution between man and nature. Okay, and then the other part, oops, so here's some words, says weeds that are resistant to herbicides survive and reproduce, leading to a shift in the population of weeds to be more and more resistant. Sorry, I think the more and more resistant got cut off. And then the last thing that doesn't really match what we've just talked about, but is in the standards or the curriculum for 7.8, is that they mention transitional fossils. So what we can see is evidence for evolution in the fossil record. So like here we have the evolution of tetrapods, and we can see in the fossil record the like transitional fossils showing the changes over here millions of years. It was pretty exciting when they discovered Tiktaalik up in the Arctic with like a flat head in the rock layers. So yeah, that is it for 7.8. Great job.